Welcome to Subject to Change, a sustainability podcast.
Do, 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 do.
Well, hello.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
I want you to know I don't join with video for just anybody.
Welcome to Bennett Carlin, magician and great human. Not every fight.
You know, one of the things I'm appreciating as I'm getting older is that not everybody's got every capability, and there are fights that they're important fights, but maybe they're best left. Maybe there are other people better qualified to fight those fights, and I can't just dive head first into everything.
What's one of those fights that you're putting down that you think someone else needs to pick up?
Oh gosh, I mean, once upon a time, I'd have been all over the place, even with political things. Mm-hmm. With everybody knew my opinion. I'd be out there, and I was involved for a time with housing issues. I marched on Washington twice, but one of only two things I've done in my life that my kids were impressed by. You know, your wiring changes as you get older. And
do you think people get more conservative as they get older, or their opinions get more solidified? Maybe not conservative, but their opinions in general get more solidified as they get older?
I haven't seen that myself. I mean, maybe at the time that was true. Maybe conservative means something different now that it meant then.
Yeah. I almost fell off my chair when my staunch Republican mom, when Obama was running, she was like, I really hope he gets elected. And it was just such a breath of fresh air that she could think outside of what she had structured herself into for most of her life. And so that was interesting to me, because I've always heard, people get more conservative as they get older. And I wonder, like, here's the thing, I'm saying that out loud because I'm afraid of getting more conservative as I get older. I don't want to get more
happen, Jody.
Respect for new information.
As new information becomes available, your reasonable people change their minds.
And perfect. Bennett, that is actually 100% true. So I would say that as my brother and I have aged, my parents have actually become more liberal.
Really?
Things that they once upon a time thought were, well, as an example, my parents, well, I shouldn't say my parents, I will say one of my parents. I had a significant number of gay and lesbian friends growing up, and my mom was, sorry mom, but my mom was nervous about it to begin with, and didn't understand, and learning that because I brought them around that they're people.
Shocker.
And it totally it changed that perception for her. It was, oh, these people are no different than any other people. We are all just people. And so she was able to very quickly, I mean, it did not take long for her at all to come to that realization. And I have found that I'm personally quite liberal, and so in having these conversations, I found my parents, and I don't think that the Trump administration hurt the cause in making people more liberal that are on the fence. But I find that my parents, who used to never speak in terms of politics ever, we were very much a family that was, you don't talk about religion, you don't talk about politics, and you don't talk about finances. That's how I grew up. And, two of those three things are more open now. So like Bennett's saying, that new piece of information and allowing yourself to be receptive. So no, I don't think you're going to necessarily get more conservative.
Is it easier?
So this is interesting because this is going in a direction that I didn't think we were going to pull you into, Bennett, but I really kind of like it. The idea of well, this whole discussion about getting more conservative or not, and your example, Lauren, of being exposed to people who have cultures and approaches and lifestyle is different than yours can open somebody up. I struggled with my parents had, I never thought of them as racist until I looked back on our life when I was growing up and realized some of the things that they had said and done. Like when I was engaged to Martin, Martin is my husband and he's from the Netherlands. And at one point, there was the concern that I was marrying a black man, but they were much relieved when he wasn't black. So that's like shockingly horrid.
Yeah.
And then the thing that's always been in my mind is that and my brother was the same way. My brother Eric, he had these gross, horrible stereotypes in his head that he would express without any inhibitions, but he met people on an individual level. So he would express these horrific things, but his friends were all over the spectrum. And he was totally accepting of people on an individual basis. And yet he still espoused these prejudices that angered me. So I'm wondering if he never had a chance to get older, but I'm wondering if we tend to think in generalities and stereotypes as we get older. Maybe it's not that we get more conservative, but we broad brush things because it's easier. That's a random thought into this discussion.
That could be, and again, that's that maybe that starts to touch on that area of no longer getting out and pounding your fist and screaming about things that once upon a time you would have pounded your fist and screamed about. It's just like, all right, there's nobody's. A friend of mine once said, nobody's mind was ever changed by somebody else's outrage.
That is true. That is true. Connection to the story that created the outrage might change a mind, but the outrage never does.
Put them in the same platoon.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then I just looked at the screen as I was talking about racism and realized we're all white, but we might have religious roads to navigate. You are, Bennett, you're Jewish, yes?
I am, but I mean, just if I can, throw something on the table at this moment, my family is filled with mixed marriages.
Yeah.
So, by the time I came along, my wife is Presbyterian. By the time I came along and said, yeah, we want to get married, I was the third one already. So this was like, this was not a big deal.
Not a big deal.
But my parents, my grandmother was living at the time. They were all, at least to my young perception, they were all very accepting. So I mean, it's when you do these, you go to these diversity, like when you do like diversity training,
yeah.
And I'm always thinking, well, yeah, I don't mean this the way it sounds, but I'm Jewish. My wife and kids are Presbyterian. My wife is handicapped. One of my sons is gay. My one of my brothers married a Chinese woman. The other one married a woman from India. What are you going to tell me about diversity? I want to hear this.
Yeah, right. Because that is, I think that's the American ideal, that there's the diversity is there, but for so many people it's not. I mean, Lauren and I have had conversations. She lives in Syracuse, and we've both talked about how upstate New York tends to be a little more, or a little less accepting, because it's not as diverse an area. I mean, Bennett, you're in New York City, one of the boroughs of New York City, and in New York City and in Manhattan. And it's exposure breeds acceptance and connection. And I think that's awesome.
Well, one of, my old boss used to say, when he talked about his experience with in the Army, he said the best thing you can do, and his Army experience were in, like around the Korean War era around that time. He said one of the best things you could do was just get guys of different races and just put them in the same platoon. He said that solves a whole lot of problems right there.
Life is symbiotic.
You know, I always preach about lessons from nature, Lauren. I'm going to do it again. Nature's messy, and the healthiest forest has a whole bunch of different types of plants in it. It's never one monoculture. And yet we even with everything, we try and simplify, and simplify means monoculture, singular approach, one answer, flipping a switch, whatever it is. And the most successful approaches are a lot messier, but a lot more vibrant and a lot more successful. I mean, a lot more resilient,
Healthier, even.
healthier.
Oh, absolutely. Life is symbiotic.
Yeah, symbiotic.
We don't like to
Life is
admit it,
symbiotic.
but it is.
Lauren and I thank you for joining us for Subject to Change.
Thank you so much for this. This was
No,
just
Oh,
a,
thank
thank you.
It
a
was
little,
such a pleasure.
a great experience.
Good.
Cool. All right. See you later,
All right.
Bennett.
Have a good
Okay,
night.
thank you. You too.
Bye.
Thank you again.